I get the distinct pleasure of introducing Sister Rachel Gilbert. She is the incoming pastor's wife to Haven of Hope, and her pastor's wife wanted me to let her know how much she's loved and what a tremendous job she's going to do as the next pastor's wife of that church, and how excited we are to hear from her this morning. Her ministry does not go unnoticed. Come up here and give us your word, Rachel.
Good morning, church. I want to say thank you for welcoming me back up here again. It is my distinct pleasure. It is my honor to be here. And I want to thank Sister Elisa Ford for this amazing conference that ministers to me every year. I have been here all 3 years, and every year I walk away changed, and it's amazing. So thank you so much. And I also want to give honor to my husband, who is doing yard work with my 2-year-old right now. So everybody say a prayer for Rosie, that she doesn't end up driving the tractor. But also especially to they're still my pastors, to the Pastor Perry and Sister Perry. They are a huge reason why I'm here. They are a huge reason why I have the confidence to be up here. They're a huge reason why I have what I'm going to share with you. Yes, so I know they're not here, but they're here in spirit. So I want to say thank you to them. So this conference is all about renewing our minds. And you don't have to stay, it's okay, thank you. This conference is all about renewing our minds. When I first talked to Chantel about it, I knew instantly that the renewing of minds was of God, that this theme was of God. And I started praying about it, and I started meditating on it and thinking about it and trying to, listen to God and hear what God wanted me to say. And let me tell you, this is not what I wanted to say. This is not what I'm comfortable talking about. I was telling Sister McKee that, what she talked about on Thursday, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I wanted to get up here and talk about. CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, is my jam. That's what I do at work a lot. I love it. Epigenetics, I wanted you to talk more about epigenetics. But God was like, and I've been telling people this, God was like, nope. I kept trying to write something else, and instead, this message that I'm going to share with you is what kept coming out, and this is where I kept feeling the power as I was praying. So, yes, so here we go on this little journey. So what God put on my heart to talk about is fear, but not just fear, but we're going to start with fear. This last 2 years has been filled with fear. We have all gone through fear, extended, long-lasting, constant fear. And every time we felt like things were going to get better, what happened? Something else happened. Something else took away our sense of safety. So we've been dealing with the fear of the unknown, the fear of what's next, the fear of everything going horribly wrong for a very long time now. And I think part of the response that happened here this weekend was a shift happening as we're starting to renew our minds away from this fear. So fear is actually a normal adaptive response to scary situations. It's necessary. We need fear. If a bear comes storming in here and we don't react with fear, we're all gonna die, right? So we need fear. But when that bear leaves, we need to be able to go on with our lives. Because if we keep hiding in the chairs or running or trying to fight an invisible bear, nothing's gonna happen, right? We're gonna be stuck in that state. So fear is necessary. You should never feel shame for being afraid. Fear is what we need to stay alive. But fear can be too much too. We need a certain level of ignorance. We need to pretend that we don't live in a dangerous world. Otherwise, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, right? So we need fear to stay in its place. We need to be able to feel like we are going to be able to get through life unharmed, or we won't move. We won't go anywhere. And sure, we know that bad things happen, right? We do have to plan, we do have to think about ahead, but we don't live in that ever-present state of fear, usually. That, like, a healthy state of being is, oh, that sounds really stressful, but I'm gonna deal with it when I'm in the moment, right? That's a healthy state of being. What we've been dealing with for the last 3 years is not a healthy state of being. We've been waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Even now, I work with kids, and at work I still wear a mask because I work with kids, and I work with a lot of different kids and a lot of different people, and I have felt a little bit of fear as the season has changed, that flu's coming back. We hear in the news it's gonna be really bad. There's even talk of a resurgence of COVID, right? And so there's even though I'm kind of gotten used to it, I still feel a little bit of that anxiety, right? Because that's what we've been dealing with for the last 3 years. So the adaptive version of fear has 4 responses. You either fight, right? You go after the bear. You run. You go splitting out and out the exit doors. You freeze, and you just try to, like, not move and not draw attention to yourself, and you just kind of stand there. Or you submit, which is where you lay down and you get really small and you pretend like, oh, please don't hurt me, right? Those are all adaptive responses. And it's a security system that God gave us, like we talked about, to protect ourselves from the bears. And everybody this last 3 years, I think we can say, has had a fear response to COVID. We've all seen how this has shown up. So some people some people ran by denying that anything was happening, right? Some people pretended like, oh, we don't need masks. We're just gonna go about our lives. We're gonna pretend like everything's fine, right? Other people went into fight mode, and they became vicious against anyone who didn't see things the way they did on both sides, right? Like that is not that's like there are people in both camps that were like that. Some people hid in their homes, refusing to come out, freezing in fear. Others followed the tide of governmental mandates or conspiracy theories, submitting to whatever helped them feel most safe, right? So we all fall into one of those categories, and we probably all jumped around a little bit too as this pandemic went on. And I don't blame anyone for their response. Everyone was just trying to survive this global removal of our needed sense of safety, because that's what COVID did. It took away our global sense of safety. We lost that ability we have to pretend like everything's fine. Yeah. And that's actually when it becomes a disease. That's actually when we start calling it trauma, is when it takes away our sense of safety, even when the threat is gone. When we're walking through life and we're afraid all the time, and we're on high alert all the time, and our security system, that's what I call our fear response with my kiddos, when that security system is going off all the time, it creates so much stress. It creates so much pain, right? It's this, because your body can't relax. When I work with people who have gone through trauma, one of the first things we do is work on retraining their body to relax, to stop holding all of that tension, because they're always waiting to have that fear reaction. Before you even go and talk about the trauma, you have to know how to bring your body back down. So we're all gonna take a deep breath right now. So we're all gonna breathe in through your nose, hold it for a second, and let it out really slow. What did you guys notice? Come on, somebody brave. What did you guys notice? What happened? Yes, your body relaxes, right? And I did a little lesson for our HOH kids once about how the breath of God, he gave us his breath. So when we take a deep breath, we're actually taking in the breath of God, and he's helping our bodies feel safe and relax. That's another day, though. So when you're feeling stressed and you're feeling your whole body, check in with yourself. Notice how your body feels. Your body and your mind and your soul are all connected. They're all connected. So if your body is tense, what do you think that's a sign of? That your head is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, that something is stuck, that something's off, and you need to address it, right? So as I talk, because I'm going to share some of my story, and I think we all felt the power of our stories yesterday in that panel. Wasn't that panel so good? I think I cried through that whole panel. Good tears, but tears, right? So as we go through today, if you notice yourself tensing, take that deep breath of God and help your body relax. So when I think about the side effects of COVID, and I think about what happened not just in those 3 months when we were all on super high alert, right? I think about the relationships that shifted and changed because we were in isolation. There's studies from couples therapists where they talk about how it either made or broke relationships. People either got super tight and strengthened their relationships, or they broke up. There was no in between. COVID was the test of fire for everybody, and friendships too. I have people that I don't really talk to anymore, not because anything bad happened, but because we didn't stay connected in COVID, and that sort of broke it. We just haven't connected again. And so fear, as I was going over this message, right, I keep talking about fear because this is what God kept putting on me. And I was like, I don't want to talk about fear. Fear is so sad. It's the last day of the conference. I want to build people up. I want to talk about how to fix your thoughts. I want to talk about the breath of God. But I think we have to acknowledge that fear is here. And we can't keep pretending that fear isn't here. And that is a journey that I went through these last 2 years. So I experienced great fear during COVID, great fear. I was on the upswing. I had gotten married. We were buying a house, and we bought at the perfect time. That was such a God thing. We bought at the perfect time. We bought right before the market took off. It was great. So we buy this new house. We find out that I'm pregnant. I was so excited, my first baby, and the people who knew me when I was in college were like, you were happy you were pregnant? But yes, I was happy I was pregnant. I was so excited to be a mom. And we were just riding high, right? And then the pandemic hits. And I go to my first sonogram appointment. And I understand the stress that I was working in a healthcare setting at the time, and I knew the stress that people were under. But this lady at the front desk was so mean to me about not letting my husband come in with me. I've never been pregnant before. This is our first pregnancy. I have no idea what's going on. I'm a little nervous, right? We're going to see our baby for the first time, and this lady is practically yelling at us that my husband can't come in with me. And we go out to the car, and we're both crying, and I go in, and I'm crying. And I do the sonogram, and that was an amazing moment. But my husband's on my phone, right, watching the sonogram. And that's how every appointment was. I would go in alone. Chris would call me. We'd put him on the video. He would pretend he could see what was happening, and I was there alone. And he was alone in his car or at work, hiding in an office so he could watch these videos. And my whole pregnancy felt alone. We were nervous to even be around friends for a while. It took a while for us to even start talking to people because I was pregnant. We didn't know what COVID would do. We didn't know how it would affect us. It was scary. It was terrifying. And then, right, so I'm having a healthy pregnancy, everything's going great. And then just like that, it went from a healthy pregnancy to being rushed to the hospital, sitting in the hospital, terrified, knowing something's wrong, feeling, I ended up having high drops. I don't know if you guys know what high drops is. It's very scary. Your whole body swells up. The baby swells up huge. Pay attention to your bodies. Because I had a healthy pregnancy, everything was going good, and I had a week where I was I looked at a picture of myself and I was like, I got big. And I felt really big, and I could tell that she wasn't moving the same. She was moving, but she wasn't moving the same. And I was like, something's wrong. And I went to my appointment, and I told that midwife, I was like, something's wrong. I feel like something's wrong. I got really big. I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid. I'm probably being paranoid, but, and so she gave me a really thorough exam. She was excellent, and she really checked me out, and she was like, yeah, I think I gained 7 pounds in 2 weeks since my last appointment. And she was like, And it was so funny because she was like, so we're going to set you up with a sonogram. And I was like, ooh, yay, more pictures. And I go to the front desk, and I worked for kind of the evil empire at the time. And I was like, well, my job doesn't like it if I don't give them a month's notice, right? And yeah, I know. And I don't work there anymore. And And the midwife comes up behind me and tells the scheduler, no, she needs to be seen like next week. Because the appointment was on a Friday. She needs to be seen next week. I was like, okay. So Tuesday I go in. Again, I'm thinking I get more pictures of the baby. Chris and I are not worried at all. I prayed. I did pray about it. I remember distinctly when I first felt off, I prayed to God. I was like, God, I know I'm being paranoid, but I need you to take care of me. I need you to make sure this baby's okay. I need you to give me peace of mind, right? Thank goodness he didn't give me peace of mind, right? If I had peace of mind and hadn't said something to the midwife and really pushed, who knows if she would have been as thorough with her exam, right? So anyway, I have the pregnancy, and they find the high drops. I get rushed to the hospital. I sit in the hospital for a whole day, not knowing what's going on. Chris and I are praying practically every moment. We're just in prayer. And we're telling our friends, do not tell us the stats. I only want to hear what the doctor's telling me. Don't tell me what the odds are. We later learned it was a 20 to 50% shot that she would live. 20 to 50% shot that she would live. Yeah. So we go in, we have the emergency C-section. Thank God they let Chris be with me in that room. I think I would have died if they hadn't let him in that room with me. We're in the room together. I don't get to see her. We don't hear her cry. I go to recovery. They bring her by in the incubator, covered in wires, covered in tubes. She looked like a prize fighter. She was so swollen. She weighed like 7 pounds at 7 months. She weighed 7 pounds because she was so swollen. So we start the NICU experience. I'm recovering from a C-section, right? I'm recovering, and we start the NICU experience. We can't go in together. We have to go alone. So one of us is always by ourselves. We were in the NICU for 6 weeks and 5 days. 6 weeks and 5 days. 12 to 14 hours a day of me sitting with a baby that I can't bring home with me, that I have to leave at the end of every day, that stays in a box every day. We drove together, we went together. I think there was only a handful of times where either of us ever went alone, drove up to the hospital by ourselves. And there was one time where I can't even remember what it was. There was a test they had to do or something, and they needed both of us there. Or they had to go over, I don't know what it was, but they had to have us in together. And we felt like we were doing something wrong. Sitting with our baby together. That's how messed up this COVID was. It separated us from our children. It separated us from each other, right? That's how much fear was going on, right? And they were doing the best they could. These policies were not meant to make me suffer. They weren't meant to make me feel lonely. They were there to keep everybody safe. They were doing the best they could. They didn't always make sense, but they were trying, right? They were doing the best they could. I've stopped looking at my notes, which is probably a good thing. But so in that time of me going in alone, right, I'm a pretty, I had a great childhood. I've got lots of resiliency factors in my background that make me, a pretty sturdy mental person, right? I can handle a lot. I deal with crazy stuff at work, literally crazy stuff at work all the time, right? You can come in, you can tell me all about your worst trauma, and I've got you. I am the calm presence. I am the safe space. I have got you, right? That went away. It went away. It went out the door. All of that isolation, all of that sitting alone and feeling that inadequacy. And, my logical brain is like, you are a good mom. You're here, right? But that other part of me, I don't even know where that part comes from. Maybe it's the lizard brain. Maybe it's the fear center. I don't know. But that part of me that was like, you should be with her all the time. She shouldn't be here. What did you do? How did you make this happen, right? And I know that was all a lie, right? This was random. There was nothing I could have done to stop it. There was nothing I could have done to prevent it. It just happened, right? But that's the scary thing, because that means I have no control. There is no fix for what happened, right? And I sat in all of that by myself. And Chris was amazing. My husband is amazing. Those of you who know him know how amazing he is. I see them laughing back there. They grew up with him, so they've seen his evolution. But he is the best. He is the best. I wouldn't have had kids if it weren't for him, because no one else would have made me feel safe enough to have kids. But I still went through this alone, and it was horrible. It was horrible. And we had been praying. I was close to God, okay? I was praying all the time. I was asking for his help and his strength. I felt his presence. It wasn't like I was trying to pull away, but somewhere in there with all that fear and all of that repeated, like, not feeling able to control anything and not feeling like I knew what was going to happen, even when we knew she was safe, right? And thank God that happened fairly quickly. It still felt like, because we would, she got the tubes out of her pretty quickly. Like, she was she is a miracle baby. She is a miracle baby. She should not have survived in the first place. She recovered so much faster than we thought. She has no developmental delays other than she doesn't like to talk or eat. But, she's catching up and she's doing her thing. And that's actually, she's not even that far behind. Like, she's fine. So, But I could not shake this fear. I could not shake this fear that that something was going to go wrong. Even after, I'll get there. All right, I'm going to back up because I'm going too far. Anyway, but in this process, I started to push God away because it just felt like so much. And it felt like it wasn't stopping. And it felt like, I don't know. To this day, I'm not entirely sure at what point it shifted, but I went from, God, I trust you, to God, why? To God, please don't do this again. To God, oh God, I don't want this to happen again. And then I got angry. And I got angry that it happened. I got angry that I felt this way. And I started just, nope, 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 nope. And it started showing up in my life, right? I found myself snapping at my amazing, wonderful, perfect husband over nothing, like stupid stuff. Like, you left a spoon in the sink. How dare you? I wanted a wife. I did. I wanted a wife. I felt that message so hard. That was so good. That was like just for me. Thank you for that. And Chris was the only one who knew what was going on. Like, he was there with me. He was going through his own stuff, and I'll let him talk about that one day when he's ready. But, he was there with me. He was supportive, and I was get so snappy at him and so angry at him. And this is when Rosie's home, right? She comes home. She's out of the hospital. We should be a time of joy. And there was joy. There was joy. I was also really tired. But, there was joy there. It wasn't like it was all the time, right? But it was there, and it was constantly there. And, yeah, I'd have, like, these moments of, like, oh, right? It was not good. And I knew I didn't want to be angry at God, so I even started lying to myself about that. I started saying, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I trust God, right? Like, I don't want to be mad at God. But it was still there. I was pretending. And so I had been in therapy through all this. My husband, because he knows me, was like, go get a therapist as soon as Rosie was born. And I did, and it was great. And my therapist is awesome. But at this point, I was like, I think I'm good. Like, I'm good. Like, things are good. I don't need therapy. And I started even talking to him about, like, maybe we could do, like, once a month just to check in. Everything's fine. But because I was lying to myself. I wasn't being honest. I wasn't being honest to myself about what was going on. And that made it worse, of course. And in the middle of that, right? So those of you who know Rosie know that she doesn't sleep very well. So last night was amazing. I gotta say, I miss my baby girl, but it was so nice to sleep through the night and not have anybody wake me up. Have to make a bottle going, Rosie, it's all right, I'm coming. Yeah, and there was one night where we were, so Rosie gets, anyway. So occasionally she'll kind of regress and she'll get worse with her sleep. And there was one night where, like, I think she'd woken me up like 3 or 4 times. And I was just so done and so tired. And I had like some smaller panic attacks, like smaller, like I know what they are, and I knew what to do, and I kind of like was able to calm myself out of it. And that night, I could not calm myself down. I could not. And I had to leave her room. I wasn't worried I would hurt her, but I was worried I would hurt her because I was like not in control of my body anymore. Like, I had lost all control, right? My greatest fear was happening. In my fear and rejection of God about losing control, I lost control of my body, right? I was panicked. Chris had no idea what to do. It was not good. I ended up like on the floor, like my hands on the floor, because grounding, right? I'm a physical touch person, so when I'm scared, I need feedback. I need physical feedback. So I'm like on the cold floor. I've got my palms on the floor. I'm taking these gaspy breaths. I'm trying to calm myself down. I can't stop thinking about my daughter's gonna die. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna kill my daughter. Something's gonna happen. It's gonna be horrible. I can't get it to stop, right? It was like, I think I went on for about 20 minutes because your body can't sustain that actually. So if you ever have a panic attack, if nothing else, know that it will end because your body can't sustain that level of adrenaline and it'll stop. And that's what happened. I didn't calm myself down. My body got so tired I collapsed essentially, right? So Chris is like, "You gonna call your therapist?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm gonna call my therapist." So call my therapist. And I'm like, I'm so like, what is happening? What is happening? But the minute I looked at it, the minute I stopped pretending it wasn't happening, it got better. So I finally told my therapist. He started pulling at the thread. I hate when we pull at the thread. It hurts so much when you pull at the thread. And we started figuring out, that I was having an anger fear reaction, right? Because of all of that trauma that had been going on. And I was living in fear. It was coming out as anger. Anger is a cover-up. If you're mad, you're not really mad. There's something else going on. There's something else going on. You need to pay attention to what's going on underneath that anger and address that. The anger isn't the problem, right? And I think it was like literally it happened. So I had the panic attack. I have therapy 2 days later. I go to church that Sunday, and I think we even had new people there. But I don't get to go to the altar very much because of my 2-year-old, and she loves only me apparently. But that Sunday I passed her off, and I went to the front and I collapsed on the altar. And I am not a screamer, right? Like I worship. I think you guys have seen me dancing around. I worship. I laid on that floor and I just screamed to God, "Take this out of me. Take it out of me. I don't want this," right? We are women of God. I'm a woman of God. I believe in God. I believe in his healing power. I don't want this. What is this sitting in my chest right now? What is this? And I screamed, and I scared Rosie. Chris was like, "You freaked Rosie out." I was like, "I don't know. I was trying to get it out of me, okay?" And I screamed so loud, and I felt God there with me. And he didn't say anything to me, but I don't think I needed him to say anything to me. I think he just needed to be with me. And I hadn't told anybody about this. Chris was the only one who knew anything was going on. And he only kind of knew part of it because I didn't feel ready to talk about it. It still felt icky and gross and shameful that I had all these feelings inside of me. And I got up, and Sister Perry comes on over and gives me a hug and goes, "You have trauma. You have trauma." And I was like, "I have trauma? No, I don't." Right? The therapist who literally has this conversation on a weekly basis was like, "I don't have trauma. I didn't go to war." Please. Yeah. Physician, heal thyself. So that started what I needed. That started what I needed. And I'm gonna have, can you guys pull up 1 John for me? Because in that moment, as I screamed and I pulled that fear out of me, and it didn't all come out. It didn't all come out at once, but it made a big enough hole that I could start filling it with what needed to be there instead, right? So in 1 John, "Herein is our love made perfect, that we may have boldness in the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world." We're going to go to 19. Or 17, 18, and 19, please. Can we go to 18? There it is. "There is no fear in love, But perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us. Here it is in the Bible. We are not meant to fear, and the way to fight fear is to love. Sister McKee, you said on Thursday that when we pull something out, right, we have to replace it with something else. If you want to stop thinking about white polar bears, you got to think about pink elephants, right? And isn't this verse what we're talking about here? And how do we replace fear with love? We connect. We stop living by ourselves. We stop pretending that we're okay. We acknowledge that feeling that's taking us over, and we connect with people. So that first connection was kind of my therapist, but really it was Sister Perry. It was Sister Perry, because my therapist is like the safe space that lives off over here, right? That's where I go, right? But Sister Perry is a person that I connect with and love, right? And it took vulnerability to admit to my pastor's wife, who I admire and respect, that I was not doing well. And what did she do? She met me with love and understanding. So the other side of this message is, when people are hurting, do not tell them what they should be doing instead. Go and give them a hug, okay? Go and give them a hug. And then when they're ready and they want help and they want advice, then you talk about what they can do. But you meet them with love first, right? Because otherwise they're gonna run the other way. If she had come up to me and said, well, you got to pray a little harder, I'm finding another church. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. I'm going to tell my husband that. He's going to be like, you said what? And after that, I also started talking to my husband. I also started being more honest with him about what was going on. And that led to a deeper connection with him. It led to, he didn't always understand. We kept fighting. We kept having like our normal marriage stuff, right? But we got closer and we got more able to talk about the things that make us feel scared and afraid and worried, right? Because I went back to him and talked to him. And this wasn't an easy process. It's still a process. I still feel fear. I'm dropping her off at daycare I dropped her off at the daycare for the first time 2 weeks ago, and it was the worst experience ever, and I cried in my car, and all I could think is they're going to be horrible to her and something bad is going to happen. And I know that's not true, but that's where the fear is, right? Yeah. And it was only when I started talking to people, it was only when I started opening up, and when they met me with that understanding and that love and that wisdom, that I was able to really look at it and have the courage to look at it, that I was able to forgive, right? Not to go harping back to last year, but, forgiveness is a key part of our walk with God, right? And I had to ask for his forgiveness. That's an obvious one, right? For being angry at him and pushing him away. But I also had to forgive myself. Because as a woman of God, I feel pretty solid in my relationship with God. And I let this thing happen. And, was it all my fault? No, COVID, right? And I went through a trauma and that was really hard. And I think everybody would have had a really hard time dealing with that, right? But I still needed to forgive myself for for all of that, and let go of that shame and not carry that shame and that guilt about how I handled the stress, right? So that forgiveness was key. So it was opening up. It was asking forgiveness of God. It was forgiving myself and owning that forgiveness. And then, right when I think I'm getting better, we start finding out some things. And it rocked me again. We find out some things that are going to affect our future family. And I felt it coming up, but this time I knew what was happening, and I knew what I needed to do. I went to my therapist, I went to my pastor's wife, I went to my husband, and I think I told one friend. Because I was still processing it, and I had to go through a whole grief thing. But if I had heard this news about my future family and had to make a decision in that state of fear, I don't even really like to think about it, because I don't know what would have happened if I'd had to make that decision. in a place of fear. And the funny thing is the decision I ended up making the decision that my husband and I made together, right, ended in the same place that I started when I first had the fear, right? But the difference is I was able to make that fear with my husband, with God, right, after prayer, and I was able to feel peace about it. And I grieved. I still felt the feelings, but it wasn't a feeling of fear and terror, right? So can we bring up verse 18 again? There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. Fear is torment. When we allow that fear to stay active in our lives, we open ourselves up to torment. That's what I was living in. I was living in torment. No decision should have been made when I'm living in torment. You're surviving. I was just trying to get through the day, right? Right? And that torment keeps us on high alert. We're like overreacting to things. It's so bad. It's so bad. Nobody should live in torment. If you're sitting here and any of this is resonating with you, we got to get that out of you. You are not meant to live in torment. God does not want you living in torment. That is not of God. That is not of God to live in torment, to live in fear and pain. That is not of God. We are going to feel pain. We are going to feel fear. Those emotions are real, and we need them to get through our lives and to be safe, but you don't live in them, right? You don't live in them. The only feeling, and it's not even a feeling. Peace is not a feeling. It's a state of being, right? The only feeling we should have is peace. That should be our home base, right? And we get happy and we get sad and we get, but we always should have this place of peace with God, right? Yep. But we have to be vulnerable, and we have to be willing to talk about it. We can't hide it. We are here as a sisterhood here. We are here with each other. We have that panel proves that we are not alone, right? That panel yesterday proves that we are not going through these things alone, right? Each of those women had different stories, and they each connected with us because we have all felt those feelings. We've all had those feelings. And what did they all talk about? They talked about the people that they were able to connect with. They talked about their relationship with God. They talked about feeling love, but they also talked about how they wanted to be able to grieve, right? And these are all good things, but you have to talk about it. You can't hide it. You can't go through it in the dark. And that vulnerability opens us up to this last piece that I'm going to talk to you about. And I think I went way over, and I'm so sorry. But verse 19, can we pull that up? We love him because he first loved us. If there is anyone we can be open with and vulnerable with. Do you guys know what vulnerability means? It means sharing a piece of yourself, not just talking about your life. It means talking about the fear. It means talking about, I was on my face having a panic attack, right? It's being open and trusting that that person is going to come back and meet you in love. And what does that say? We don't have to wait for God to love us because he first loved us. He first loved us. We don't have to worry about what's God going to do. He's going to love us. He loved us before we loved him. He loved me before I found God. Before I found him, he already loved me. So worrying about being vulnerable to God, I understand it, I get it, but you don't have to worry about it because God loved you first. I have one more verse, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. For God hath not given us, say it with me, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. It is time to lay down our fear. And if you sit there and tell me that you didn't feel fear during COVID, you're lying. And you need to be up here with me, because I still have fear, right? God did not give us the spirit of fear. That's not from God. He gave us power. He gave us love, the power of the tongue. He gave us the power of the Spirit, right? He gave us the power of connection with each other. He gave us love. He first loved us. He taught us how to love so that we can connect with other people and rely on other people. And he gave us a sound mind. If anybody needs to pray, I invite you forward. If anybody needs, and maybe I'm assuming when I shouldn't be assuming, but I have a hard time believing that nobody in here still has some fear that they need to lay down and leave here. So if you're having that spirit, I will pray with you. I will pray with you to let go of that fear. And that's where I'm going to leave it, because this is an act of courage to come forward and leave your fear. And maybe we need to wait. Maybe we need to have Sister Chantel come up and talk next, and because I know you got a good message, and I know we need to hear that. But don't leave your fear here. We've had so many good talks here today. We've had so many good things here today. If that fear is still rooted, that change isn't going to happen. You got to get that fear out for that change to happen. Thank you all for hearing me today. Yes, Lord. Hallelujah, Jesus. Hallelujah, God. Hallelujah, God. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Hallelujah, God. Hallelujah, God. Yes, Lord. Hallelujah, Jesus. Hallelujah, God. Hallelujah, Jesus. Hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's pray, ladies. Hallelujah. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. You unravel me with with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer
a slave to fear, for I am a child of God.
Hallelujah, Jesus.
I'm no longer a slave to fear,
For I
am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, but I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God.
You unravel me, you
Unravel me
with a melody,
with a melody.
you surround me,
You surround me with a song
of deliverance,
deliverance
from my enemy,
from my enemy.
Oh, Hayashotalaba,
Till all my fears are gone.